Okay, so again, we're on week 9, chapter 10. We're looking at decoding, word identification, and spelling. So in the book, they talk about word reading, and they say we shouldn't be surprised when students with significant disabilities struggle to learn and remember words that we teach as whole words, so like those sight words, without attention to the letters and the sounds in the words. And they talk about really needing to break up words and play with sounds and letters and before recognizing them as sight words. And they show us this processor model of word reading. Mine's a little different because I needed to kind of write what each little piece did in there, so that when students they see a word in print, it goes into that orthographic processor. So they're recognizing that this is print, they're recognizing some spelling patterns, and at the same time, their phonological processor starts working. So they're applying knowledge of those letters and sounds. This is where that speech part comes in. And maybe thinking about pronunciations that might be more fluid depending on how they know what their recognition of the word is. And then the meaning processor is assigning what could this word mean and how am I going to pronounce it? So the example I think they gave in the book was the word wind or wind. So this is the point where they're saying, I know there's these two meanings and two pronunciations of this word, and then it goes to their context processor, and they're going to use the sentence context to figure out what that word means. Any thoughts about this processor model of word reading? Okay, we'll move on. So again, something I love about the book is that it's using these research-based approaches, which I think we do a lot of, but sometimes we don't know exactly what parts are research-based, right? Or it's hard to pull it out because there's a lot of things that we do that are grounded in research, but I like that we can say, oh, here we go. These components are making this a good strategy for students for word reading. And so they talk about mostly these two, making words and onset rhyme, that together make a good strategy. So making words is spelling based, onset rhyme uses this analogy based approach, and then putting it all into practice and practicing reading with something you're interested in, practicing writing about topics you're interested in. The authors talk about that something important about this and also this processor model of word reading is that for our students who have receptive skills that are restricted or expressive communication skills that are restricted, this is a good model because it's not requiring them to say the sounds and the words out loud and to blend them out loud. This is something they can do in their heads, and we can support them with in certain ways that they show us. And it uses real words, which they talk about being more important, more beneficial for students than nonsense words or only using sight words. I'm gonna keep going. So making words, the first whole section we've got about making words, and they give us a sample on, let's see, page 170. They gave us a sample lesson plan. So for those of you who don't have the book, I'm just going to really briefly talk about what you do for a making words lesson. You start with, you give a certain set of letters. So their example is like A, M, N, T, S, and some words. And then you label their common sounds and the letters. And then you go into this making words activity. And you have the students make each word. So in the video example we'll show, which is also the link to that is listed in the end of this chapter. And we'll also maybe put the link in the chat. Kristen, if you're able to do that, if you know which one I'm doing, that would be great. So we'll watch the video, but they give them the letters, and they are using magnetic letters and making words. So you tell them, take 2 letters and make the word am, and then use it in a sentence. I am proud of you, to give them some context. And then they're going to sort the words, like those that have the an spelling pattern. And then you transfer that knowledge, so spelling other words with those tools. So you might say, okay, now look at sat, mat that you just wrote, use those to spell pat. So I've got this knowledge of that at word family. Now I'm gonna make a new word. So let's go ahead and look at that video. Before I play it, I'll put it actually in the chat so that we can, you have the option of just muting and watching on your own if this doesn't look as smooth as it should. I'll do that real quick.
Sorry, Siri, that was taking me a little bit longer. I've got it.
No. Oh, that's okay. I realized that I might have different videos than the ones that we talked about too. So we'll go ahead and play this. If you want to mute and watch it on your own, that's fine. These are from, I think it was the university, was it Iowa State? Or the state of Iowa, and PBS, Learning Media, and these are really neat. And there's support materials that go with them. Again, it's found on the link to these are also on the last page of this chapter in the resources. So this is the example of a making words activity.
Okay, so we're going to change top to make the word pop. Do not drink pop for breakfast. Oh. So I hear the pop in ours already. Look at top. I'm going to make pop. So am I going to change the T?
I just want to pause for a minute. Are you all hearing this and seeing this?
I am. It's a just tiny delay, but it's not impacting.
Nope, it's fine. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. And what do you want to put instead to make pop? Taking the T off, so I'll put that one up here. What letter do you want to change it to? You can use your hands to pick. We're looking for the one that says pop. Do you know which one it is? You can grab it, pull it down. Nice, good job. So you're saying to put the P at the beginning? Oh, very good. So you made, should we sound it out to see if you're right? What's the O say? So the word is pop. Did you get it? Nice job. Good job with your hand selecting.
Okay. What did you all think about that? What did you notice?
I think I caught that at the beginning she was pointing out that she could use her talker or she could use those magnets. That went pretty quick. And so they might have a communication that I didn't see. But I liked that. And I was thinking about students with more significant disabilities, how to use those kind of magnets or different types of magnets. Or I think, Brenda, you had some type of pointer you were helping your kiddos use to get to those words they wanted or letters they wanted to choose. Oops, you're muted. Hold on.
Yeah. There, I mean, depends on I love the magnetic letter idea and just the baking sheet and something that could actually be done via teletherapy, because some of that stuff is, you know, they have baking sheets. If we were able to fund some letters, that would be a neat way to do that. I also will sometimes use a oh gosh, what are they called? Like the little charts with the clear lines. I can't think of the name of it because I'm over 40. That's my only.
You're like a pocket.
Yeah,
thing.
There we go. Pocket chart.
Pocket thing. That's the best I could.
Pocket thing. Yeah, that's a Friday afternoon vocabulary right there. Pocket thingy. Anyways, and I will put letters on it, and I'll laminate letters and uppercase on one side, lowercase on the other side, so you can manipulate that. Sometimes I have also bought drumsticks and then easy grip that can help them put their hand on something so they can point to things. And of course, using a regular alphabet page and hiding everything but the A-M-T, hiding everything but the 5 letters, and making sure you have a space and a clear so that they can play with that letter set and make words from it.
Brenda, when you say a regular alphabet, you mean on their AAC device, you're hiding some buttons, so they're focusing in on some letters. And
yeah, so the reason why I like to use a regular AAC device is because I like for them to get familiar with where those letters are in the QWERTY layout. Because ultimately these literacy skills are about spelling words on their communication device that may not be in their device anywhere else. So I think there's value in having them access the letter sets in a consistent location that will later translate into a keyboard.
Any other thoughts about this video or this lesson?
I'm really glad you guys found a video to share with us, because I feel like a lot of times teachers like visually seeing what's being done, and I never have good video examples to give them. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree. It's always nice to see it in real life.
Was that listed in the book, or did you go searching?
Kristen found it. Thank you, Kristen. It's on the last page of this chapter. There's always resources at the end of the chapter, and this one was in there at the bottom. So this is from the author's suggestion.
Oh, awesome.
Mm-hmm. Kristen, you mentioned that you were noticing that they could use their device or they could say it in their head. I liked that in the beginning, or I liked that the teacher she knows her student, right? And so she knows, I'm going to have you say that sound. And then she said, did you get it? Like, I know you just did it in your head, but I'm not going to require you to then say the whole thing out loud. So that was a nice scaffold and example of knowing what your student is, what they can do. And
in the chat, Terry says that she noticed another student working with staff member using a pen pointer in his mouth. So there was a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah, great. In the book on page 169, if you have it, there's also a whole section on modifications, and where it talks about small group or individual lessons. It gets into a lot of modification ideas. It says it might be as simple as preparing the letter set ahead of time, so our lesson begins by handing each student an envelope or a baggie with all the letters they need. For some students, we display the letters on a lucid eye gaze frame. I think Heidi mentioned that in the chat too. And they select letters by looking. Other students move magnetic letters on a cookie tray like we saw. Others might select the letters with partner-assisted scanning. So the partner presents the letter to the learner one at a time, and the student indicates when the partner presents a desired letter. That might be with a facial expression, it might be with a button that says, yep, or that's the one, or a head nod. Where was I? And the partner moves the learner's selection. So I also appreciate they gave a lot of examples for how we can modify these activities. I'm going to pause for just a minute while people are gathering thoughts.
I also appreciate it. It's a little bit later in the chapter, but it comes back to this need for a no tech yes and no. There was really great things and examples in your notice. They're saying, look, he looked up to say yes, and then they took that, and then he looked down to say no, and they realized he didn't understand that. So they did, and that's a speechy thing that we need to be backing up, and a no tech way And I say no tech because there's so many manipulatives and other things that need to be on the screen for the literacy instruction that we can't have, oh, we have all these buttons for yes and no, and we have all of our letters, and we have this, and we have that. So I think that those subtle things of looking up for yes, or, you know, whatever voluntary movement they can, assigning a yes and a no, there's a basic communication piece required for them to be a reliable participant in the activity. And that's some groundwork that needs to be laid pretty early on in literacy instruction, I think.
Especially if folks are doing this through telepractice, right? It might be that you have the letters in the background, and then hopefully maybe they can have them to manipulate too, but you might be relying on doing some partner assisted scanning that way. Any other ideas on how you might do something like this virtually, if that's where we're at?
With the iPad, if you could share your screen, would that work?
Mm-hmm.
That would work if the child had a means to move the mouse too, then you could see. So you give mouse control and you can see where their eyes are going, or where, if they're using a joystick or a hand to move that mouse, see what letters they're going to on the display.
Mm-hmm.
I have done a virtual background where I put 4 letters around me, and then I can see which way they're looking.
Mm-hmm.
If there's time, we'd love to see that, if that's readily available.
Oh yeah, I'll see if I have that.
Yeah, I was going to share when we talked about word walls, the idea of having a word wall behind you. You could have something. Can you see that? But you can change it to have different letters, and there you go, Brenda.
Ah. So
The therapist has held 2 choices up for my daughter on just through Zoom, and then she'll touch. She's been learning to be able to touch on her iPad. It doesn't like make anything happen, but it tells the I say she chose cat or whatever, and so she's able to see that she can only do 2 choices, but she's been able to see and touch on her iPad the Zoom. Do you understand what I'm saying?
That's great. I love that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Thank you
I
for
interpret it for her, but that's how she does it.
Yeah.
Great. It's so fun to see how everyone is just coming up with ideas for this, you know, like there's no right way to do things virtually, or no wrong way. That, you know, it's like we're going to try to make this work, and people are really doing all kinds of neat things. So thanks for sharing that. That's really great. Okay. Oh, here's another, here's a tech way to do the letters, having access to the letters, and I'll just show you. Let's see, sorry. My, I think my iPad is pulled up, but it might have gone to sleep.
While you're pulling that up, Elizabeth says that Zoom has the option to make a star or a heart if you share a screen. I worked with a student and his special ed teacher, and she shared her screen with him and told him how to make a star next to the word she wanted him to find. So that's
I
something
want to figure that out.
Great tip.
that,
Yeah. So has anyone used Word Wizard? This is an app on my iPad, but you can get it for $7.99. And if you can also get it on Google Play Store, it's free to download it, and then there's a 24-hour trial, and then you pay. So there's several settings. One is like a spelling test type thing. This is the talking moving alphabet, and it has the phonics, the sounds you'll hear.
G, g, g,
Ah,
So it says ah. Then when I combine it with G,
ah, go,
it says go. And then I can move.
go, ah,
See, I
go,
think it's two fingers moves.
go,
You can move the word around.
go.
And there is a way that you can limit the words. So if I go to the settings and more settings, here it says letters and numbers displayed. And if I do that, I can type in, like for their example of their lesson, they had AM, NTS. Oops. So I could just have those letters available to manipulate like they do for the lesson. And all the letters are still here, but those ones have a black background. And if I touch the other ones, they don't. Here, I'll push trash to get rid of those. I can't manipulate those, but I do have the letters from the lesson. So I can spell tan.
Ta, tan.
And then you can change high contrast. You can change the background and the style, the letters color. So this is another way you could do it. Any thoughts about this or other programs you could use for this making words activity? Oh, does this app have vowel or diphthong? So there's here in the bottom, there's 1, 2, 3 on the bottom right. You can go to numbers, and then you can go to I don't know about, oh yeah, here's the vowels. There you go. So it does have some different options there. There's actually quite a bit you can customize with it. So for $7.99, it's a pretty good deal, I think. When our special ed tech center assistive tech lending library is back open, then this is also on the iPads that we have for loaning to folks. So if you want to try it out before getting it, we lend iPads that have tons of apps on them, communication, AAC apps, writing apps, things like that. But one of them is Word Wizard.
So I found the stamp that the person in the chat was talking about, being able to have a student stamp.
Oh, you want to share it?
I don't think I can share it because it's part of my menu on Zoom, but I just wanted to let you know under annotate, then you can choose stamp and you can choose a heart or a star or an arrow.
Oh, and annotate. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And so
Stamp.
I just put this
Oh, I
on
see.
the screen, if you saw that.
Oh,
Seeing it, but I just put a star. Yeah.
that's so cool.
I wonder if you're just up with your background, if the student could then star up.
Sari, do you want to try that? Do you want me to put up my virtual background?
Yeah, let's see.
And then
do I need to share my screen?
actually, if Sari just stops sharing and you pop up.
Okay, just a sec.
Am I a presenter? So am I on there right now? Because that's not, Sari's on there right now.
Yes.
Okay.
You're on there for us, but now that I'm talking, I'm probably on there. But
Oh, okay, so I kind of need to keep talking. As all of you know, there's not a problem with that. No.
You have to share. Are you going to share your screen, Brenda?
we were just talking about using her background so that
So
added a sorry.
you should be able to go.
Talking.
So if I talk, then I'm the one showing, and then Sarah, you should be able to go to annotate and pick a letter.
Now I don't see annotate now that we're not sharing. So I think you'd have to put like a PowerPoint slide up with the letters, and they can annotate on that, because then they're annotating on something versus.
You can't annotate on a screen. You have to annotate on a document.
Yeah. So we just figured something out. Thanks for allowing me to go on a little tangent.
No, it's great. These are the kind of things we all want to know, right?
You could put the whiteboard up and put the letters that you want and then annotate on the whiteboard.
Yeah, you could do that, and you could do it on the iPad screen, on a PowerPoint, anything you are sharing.
Can you do whiteboard app if you're doing on a computer, or do you have to be presenting from an iPad?
I don't know if there's a whiteboard something on just the computer. Maybe there is.
There's whiteboard on Zoom.
Oh, whiteboard on Zoom.
Oh,
Yeah, when you go to share screen, one of the options is whiteboard.
Oh, okay.
I use it all the time.
Okay, let's see.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yep, that's
I'm
great.
sorry. You start using these things, you forget other people don't.
There you go.
And
There's those stamps.
yeah, that's the stamp.
Okay, great.
Then can the student add a stamp while the teacher is the one presenting?
Yeah, you give permission and annotate that they have control.
Okay.
And you have to watch out because they have control. They can take control. You can take it back, but if they're controlling, it's hard to. One of the other speech therapists yesterday said one thing she does is just if they won't like give her back control, she'll go, raise your hands, and real quick take control back. And they don't that's what she's doing.
Good one.
That's funny.
You know, but you know, sometimes the kids get so into it that they don't stop for you to be able to have your turn.
Oh,
Good engagement activity though, huh?
It is. Yeah. But I just love that. She goes, oh yeah, I just say, raise your hands. And then I take back control.
Also good on less taking turns, turn taking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do the YMCA dance real quick.
Yeah.
Or give me
Bust
five.
out. We start busting out with head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
Okay. All right, let me get back. Let's see. Back to screen.
Apparently, we all have attention deficit disorder today. Sorry, Sari.
No, this is awesome because I'm learning things, and that's what I want from these book studies that we all want. Okay, so let's move on to the next section here, onset rhyme activities. So the whole thing about these, this part of the approach, so it's a blended approach, right? We're doing the word, making words, and then the onset rhyme, is that you have this keyword idea. So the teacher or the staff come up with keywords that students are going to use to transfer their knowledge about these new words they're making. And they refer to, there's this table 10.2 on page 173 with 37 most common rhymes in written English, which is good for us to think about when we're making our keywords. And so your keywords are going to be important to the student, but they're also going to have to do with this, preferably something maybe from this table, and that you can tie to your lesson for these making new words. It says keywords are introduced once students begin to understand that words that sound like they have the same ending often have the same spelling pattern. These keywords represent the 37 most common rhymes in written English. Okay, there you go. That appear in hundreds of words that begin with just single consonants. So bang, a lot of bang for your buck there. And they should already, this is really important, they should already be part of the student's receptive vocabulary and should be useful in the student's expressive communication. However they're expressing themselves, it should be a useful thing. So good thing to think about there. So then they give an example of what you would do for these activities. And this first one is teaching spelling patterns, and they call it, what do they call it? Rounding up the rhymes. So you read a poem or some kind of text, and then you ask your students to identify, again, however they do that, to indicate when they hear words that rhyme. So you're coming up with these rhyming word pairs. And then the next step, you review the rhyming word pairs and write them on index cards. So you're making this accessible for students, like in a, what did Brenda call it? Pocket charty thingy. available for kids to look at. And you've got those pairs, and then you're arranging them so that you can compare and contrast the patterns. So you might have face, place, not, lot. And then the step 4 is that you're removing pairs that do not share the spelling patterns. So you're asking them to match new words to the remaining rhyming pairs, and then asking students to spell words using the sets of the rhyming words to help. So let's look at a video of this, because that's what we all want, to see it in action.
Have the link ready to share in the chat. I just want to make sure it's, yep, I think that's.
Oh yeah, great, thank you so much. So go ahead and watch it on your own if you'd like, or I'll play it here as well.
Okay, does anybody see a pair of words that we are going to need to get rid of? Because we only want to keep the ones that are spelled the same. Yes? Oh, good, Noah. Remember, we have new, do, understand, hand, to, blue. Yesterday, play, squirt, dirt, room, doom. So Noah says he sees one we need to get rid of. Anybody else? All right, Noah. What do you see?
Yes.
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 What about this pair?
Yes.
Is that what you were thinking about? Yeah? Are we getting rid of those?
Yes.
Oh, Noah says we're getting rid of.
So they're getting rid of new and do because they don't share that spelling pattern. I don't think I made that clear before. I'll keep going.
New and do. What do you guys think? New and do. Noah says, get rid of them. Oh, do you agree, Kyle? Oh, yes, Emily agrees. Jalen, what are you thinking? Buster? All right, new, do. Good eyes. Yeah, we are getting rid of those. All right. Woo, are there any others we need to get rid of?
Okay. What are your thoughts about that one? It's just good to see a video of it, right, being used. I noticed, I think most of the kids in there had a communication system they were using. When she was talking, I heard a lot of yes, yes.
So it seems like the students would need a pretty high cognitive skill to be able to engage in that activity, and true. And that teacher knows those students. I was thinking about needing to have something at their desk, or I was thinking about the visual component. But again, she knows her students, but there may be some different adaptations that you're doing based on that group of students of how that activity would play out.
And there might be things that we didn't see for students.
Right, going on at the desk.
And that's another reason I love peer educators, because a lot of times they're there, we're not maybe seeing it in the video, but they're kind of next to the student and they're talking about some words and doing like a little mini scaffolding or lesson with them.
Yeah, and someone said good vision. That's what I was thinking. Good vision to see the words from a distance, and then so many words and go quickly. But it may be reviewing. That might have been a review of those words, and now they were picking out.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have the same ending.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to derail the conversation, but I do have those concerns about those with lower vision in the classroom and how you're trying to do group setup and what are we doing with those kids at that time, and is all of this functional for those that have no vision? What does their participation in this look like? And not wanting to exclude them from the opportunity to hear those words and how they sound. And so, yeah, I think, there was recently a discussion with Beth Ross and Karen Erickson and the guy from Lesson Picks. I can't think of his name right now. And I don't know if you guys saw that. And they were talking about how one of the most commonly asked question in the book studies related to all of this is, what about those kids with low vision? And so it is something to consider that that most of the strategies we're using right now are those with typical vision or close to. And so I don't know.
We had that same question, from Bruce McClanahan, seeing that we were offering this book study, saying, how much does this provide strategies for those with visual impairment? And I think that's something, as we go into the book study next fall, that would be good to pull in a few vision specialists to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the chapter actually mentioned there was some phases, and they did talk about a little bit of an auditory activity like this, that they did make note of students that had vision impairments that would be able to still do this activity.
Yeah. I think that came up in the word sorts, I think, right?
Right.
Right, they talked about auditory sorts, they had the visual sorts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that the idea isn't you're always doing all of these. You might be doing some in different ways, or depending on what your students.
And I think the book does give a great examples of different ways of access and different ways to do things for those with different types of impairments. Yet I think we also need those specialists coming in to let us know what's available and how we could provide even better accommodations.
Mm-hmm.
In that podcast, or in that webinar, whatever, that live discussion, Karen Erickson said, well, why, what is the purpose of teaching literacy? And in this case, we're teaching literacy so that they can have communication skills that are authentic. And if their vision is too low, to use literacy skills to communicate. If their vision is too low, to functionally participate in visual reading, but they don't have the motor skills to do Braille, then is it what parts of the literacy program are functional? Like finding a first letter, knowing the first letter correspond, like that, being able to tell someone it starts with this sound, that might be functional for somebody who's not visually competent. But some of these other pieces of putting all the letters together may not be a functional literacy goal. So even though we want to do group instruction, we have to be careful that that may not be part of their individualized plan. And we want to include kids in all things, but if it's not the best use of their time because their vision is not going to be functionally visually literate, then we need to consider what parts of the literacy program are functional for those with significant visual impairments, and what parts of it really don't make sense for instruction.
One of the things that when I saw Karen Erickson at ATIA that she talked about was, even if you have someone that they probably won't be able to read Braille, but that's their way of kind of interacting with just text in general, is just take like the mistakes from the Braille printer and let them kind of like feel, you can rub it on their hand if they can't manipulate it, and just that, give them some tactile sense that, words have letters and this is what they're like. And so a way you might be able to do this activity, the word sort, and include those kids with significant visual challenges is, see if the vision specialist would type out those words on the Brailler, and and some of them might be able to learn that, it does feel like the pattern is the same at the end. And so you might be able to modify it that way, even for kids who are not going to be readers by Braille, but to help those visually impaired kids get a sense of, this is what reading looks like, this is what words feel like.
Yeah, I think that's true. I know that some of my kids with low vision, although their tone is so that their hands are contracted, they're not, the Braille thing is not that functional, right? I have girls even with Rett's that are very, very low vision, and their hands just are not going to participate in so much. So there will be always those ones that are really challenging. Some of the kids could also potentially feel what letters feel the letter shapes through like a wiki stick idea. But again, they have to have a tone situation where, they're able to feel it. So I think those kids with visual impairments are always tricky when it comes to the modifications required on some of these things.
Well, and Karen talked about, like, even if they can't really feel with like their fingertips, you could find a spot where you could just kind of rub it so that they just get that sensory input that, oh, here's some bumps, and those bumps represent words, and just to kind of get them engaged with something that they can kind of process from a sensory perspective, that, oh, this is what a word, would feel like, even if they're not going to be able to get their hands open to Braille. So it was really, I had never thought of that. And so it was just a really interesting kind of takeaway.
Yeah, it's like, how do we make sense of this with your sensory system?
Right.
And the great thing is that now we have these questions, and we can think about this as we're implementing it and say, oh yeah, what about? So I think that's really great. We're thinking about all these different modifications.
I think that something like that, new and do, that's a really, really hard for somebody with visual impairment to go, wait a minute, those aren't spelled the same. Right? Because that auditory piece makes sense, right? So the auditory piece makes sense. And then when the spelling is different at the end, I don't know. I don't know.
You can spell it out loud, though. You can spell it out loud.
Yeah. That's true.
Because that auditory piece is still important.
Yeah, that's true, Linda.
So when we have this book study in the fall, we're going to look a little deeper into each of these topics. That'll be a really good thing to think about as we are doing that, like you mentioned, Kristen. One other thing we'll talk about a little bit more is the teacher created text and predictable chart rating, which we talked about a little bit in the writing section. But they mentioned Tar Heel Reader. So when you have an account on Tar Heel Reader, you can find a book. Even if you don't have an account, you can write a book. And so on page, I just want to get to that in case you wanted to see. Where is that? Oh, page 173, they talk about teacher created text, and then they go into the word wall. But so you can write a book. I just want to show you a quick, we'll do more later in the fall, but just quickly, it's really fast to do. So they're talking about using one of those, one of your keywords or the words that you're focusing on, like my name is name, or let's say it's jump. So you can do a whole book focusing on jump. You get your picture, add the book, and add a bunch of pictures, and then you will just fill it in, enter a short sentence. Oh, sorry, everything's in my way here. You add your sentence for each page. So here's my jump. I can say, he jumps. Oh, he will jump high. Something maybe more interesting, but then you add a picture for each page, and you've got that jump word all over and over, and then you can save it as a draft if you don't want to actually publish it, but you can come back to it and then you've got your book. And then you could use things that are meaningful to your students and to the words that you're working on. That's just a super quick look into Tar Heel Reader for now, since we don't have a whole lot of time, but they talk about a word wall, which we've also talked about in previous chapters, but they're talking about the word wall in the sense that it should be words that your students are expected to read with automaticity, spell with accuracy, and then for those reasons have no more than 5 new words added each week. And on one of the book snaps, I loved, they showed, oh, here it is. They've got their word wall. And one of the things that they talk about in the book is having each letter as a header and then adding the words to it. They talk about having this, I think it's in this section, they talk about for kids who have AAC devices, for the word wall activity, that it's separate. So it could be on a file folder or on the big wall in your classroom. But that at that point, you're not using the words, you're not having a word wall like in their device. Compare and contrast lessons, I forgot to tell you that in the link that Kristen put in our chat, it goes to all of our documents that we've had for these chapters on our book study. And then in that folder, there's examples of the compare and contrast and the word sorts, the auditory word sort, I think a spelling word sort, and those are from the authors, the Brooks Publishing downloads. So those are in there in a chapter 10 folder. And then it talks about cross-checking your work. And I'll just pause for a minute to see if, okay, thanks, Kristen. So whoops, let's go ahead and look at that one, cross-checking. The idea here, let me find that. The idea that it's a self-correction strategy. So it says, as students learn to decode words using the letter by letter information they gain in making words, that first one, and the spelling patterns they recognize from keywords, we teach them to cross-check their decoding efforts with the meaning of those words in context. So it helps kids say, answer the questions like, does that sound right? Does that make sense? We're helping them come up with those strategies when they're doing their word practice. So here is an example of that. Kristen, do you want me to put the link to this in there in the chat?
I was just looking for that one. It's the, what's it called? The close, utilizing close activity?
Yep.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. Utilizing a close activity to promote decoding.
Desiree, shoes.
So they have
shoes. What does shoes begin with?
Again, this is at the end of like a lesson. They probably spent several days working on, right? Or weeks maybe. And they're trying to guess what that covered word is. So they're using that sentence context and things that they know about these spelling patterns.
What 2 letters say sh?
Oh, S-H.
S-H, good.
Well, hi.
Shoes. Victor, do you have a guess?
A hat.
A hat. Okay, my mom will be so mad that I got dirt on my new hat. Can you spell it for me?
H-A-T.
H-A-T. All right, do we have any other guesses? Giselle?
A scarf.
Scarf. All right, what does scarf start with? S. Scarf. What's at the end of scarf? F. Very good. All right. Does that make sense? My mom will be so mad that I got dirt on my new scarf. You could get dirt on your scarf, couldn't you? Levi, did you have any ideas?
No.
No? Victor?
In underwear.
You get dirt on your underwear? Oh dear, you must have gotten really messy.
Okay, I'm just gonna, for the sake of our
Where?
Oh, it's too big.
Do you think it's too big? Look at that. There's underwear. There's our covered word.
No.
We have to eliminate that one right away, don't we?
All right, I love that. It's too big. I'm just gonna go a little bit farther so you can see what their process is here. Although that my video is buffering now, so maybe I'll stop. Okay, there. I know there's a question about the downloads that I mentioned, and let me just. I'm just gonna let you guys watch this one because my video is gonna be too slow. Watch it on your own. In our folder, Chapter 10 resources. These are the downloads from Brooks Publishing. In the beginning of the book, there's a page called About the Downloads, where you can go and find a few sample lesson plans, some flowcharts. There's just a few things they have. So one of them is about the auditory word sorts lesson that we talk about in this chapter. There's the compare and contrast lessons that they talk about when we're looking at like going on your keyword and finding the spelling patterns. And then spelling-based word sorts. They have a lot on word sorts in this chapter. So I had to read that part a lot because it kind of, I got confused about the different types of word sorts and when you might do them. I hope that answers that question.
That program Words Their Way is a great program for word sorts too, and it has a lot of pre-made materials.
Great, thank you. Brenda and I were talking about word walls, going back to that word wall idea, with a teacher who wanted to have her unique, she uses the unique curriculum, and she wanted to have her words. She always has those in her class. So we're talking about virtual word walls, and I think maybe some of you do this. You can just do it by having a PowerPoint, having it as an image and using it as your virtual background. You could do it in Google Slides. I just wanted to tell you that you can also, like Teachers Pay Teachers has some digital word walls if you want to just have something you're starting with. The one I have in the background is this. And it just gives you a way to get started right away, and you can edit however you want. But there's some others here, but you could also just do your own. Anyone else have any ideas about word walls or the video that we just watched part of, or anything, since we're kind of wrapping up here at the end? Let me look in our chat here. Okay. Well, so I'm gonna put our book snaps back up as we're finishing up here because I love them. If you are up for it and you want to do a book snap about our final chapters or about any of the chapters that we've done so far, please do. They're awesome resources, and it always helps me kind of, well, when I say always, I did one. And when I did that one, it helped me really understand the chapter. So I'm going to try to do it for the next one. And we'll have our last session next week, next Friday at noon. We'll talk about our last 2 chapters. And we hope to see you there.
Yeah, we have using assistive technology effectively to support literacy. And then I think it's implementation. Organizing and delivering effective instruction. That's what it is.
That sounds like a whole lot of info.
Ways to wrap up and celebrate the end here.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your weekend.